The air in my small kitchen carried the faint sweetness of vanilla and regret. It was my 70th birthday, a milestone I'd approached with a mix of quiet pride and trepidation. The table before me held a modest cake chocolate with a simple swirl of frosting, baked by my neighbor, Clara, who knew my love for small, thoughtful gestures. I'd lit a single candle, its flame trembling in the stillness, mirroring the fragility of the moment. My hands, weathered by decades of work and worry, rested on the table as I waited for my family to arrive. This wasn't just any birthday. It was the first since my husband, Tom, passed 2 years ago. The silence of his absence was louder than ever, but I'd hoped today might bring a flicker of warmth, a chance to feel connected again. My son, David, and his wife, Rachel, me sister-in-law by marriage, were due any moment. I'd invited them with a cautious heart, knowing Rachel's unpredictable nature, but hoping she'd honor the occasion. The doorbell chimed, sharp and expectant. I smoothed my dress, a soft gray number I'd chosen to feel elegant yet unassuming, and opened the door. David stood there, his familiar smile a balm to my nerves. But Rachel's presence behind him shifted the air. Her eyes, sharp and restless, scanned the room as if assessing its worth. She wore a bright red blouse that clashed with the muted tones of my home, her energy a storm waiting to break. "Happy birthday, Mom," David said, pulling me into a warm hug. His voice was steady, like Tom's used to be, and for a moment, I felt anchored. Rachel, however, offered a tight-lipped smile, her arms crossed as she stepped inside. "Nice setup," she remarked, her tone clipped, eyeing the cake like it was an insult to her taste. We settled at the table, the candle still burning, its light casting shadows on the walls. I tried to keep the conversation light, asking David about his new job at the community center, sharing a memory of Tom teaching him to ride a bike in our old backyard. Rachel, though, seemed distracted, her fingers tapping impatiently on her phone. I noticed the way her gaze darted to the small wooden box on my Countera keepsake where I stored important papers and a modest sum of cash, the last of my savings from years of careful budgeting. "Rachel, would you like some cake?" I offered, hoping to draw her into the moment. Her response was a curt nod, but as I reached for the knife, she stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "Let me," she said, her voice oddly sharp. Before I could protest, she grabbed the knife, and in a motion that felt both deliberate and reckless, she slammed it down, not cutting but smashing the cake into a crumpled mess. Frosting splattered across the table, and the candle fell, its flame snuffed out. "Rachel." David's voice was a mix of shock and anger, but she laughed a high, brittle sound that chilled me. "Oops," she said, her eyes gleaming with something I couldn't name. "Guess I got carried away." My heart sank, the wreckage of the cake a small but piercing wound. I wanted to believe it was an accident, but the glint in her eyes told a different story. David rushed to clean up, apologizing profusely, but Rachel just shrugged, already turning her attention back to her phone. I sat there, stunned, the weight of the moment settling into my bones. That night, after they left, I couldn't sleep. The smashed cake was more than a ruined dessert. It felt like a symbol of something larger, something breaking apart. I thought of Rachel's restless energy, the way her gaze lingered on that wooden box. I'd always known she was ambitious, driven by a hunger for more than what life had given her. But I'd never seen this edge before. The next morning, I opened the box to check my savings, a habit born of years of caution. My heart stopped. The cash $5,000, painstakingly saved for emergencies or perhaps a small trip to see my sister in Maine, was gone. In its place was a scribbled note in Rachel's handwriting Borrowed this. We'll pay you back soon. I sat down hard, my hands trembling. Borrowed. Without asking. The betrayal stung deeper than the smashed cake, cutting through the trust I'd tried to maintain. I called David, my voice shaking as I explained what I'd found. He was silent for a long moment before saying, "Mom, I'll talk to her. This isn't right." But Rachel's explanation, when it came, was worse than I'd imagined. She called me that afternoon, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Eleanor, I needed the money for a business Venturia's sure thing. You'll get it back with interest. I promise." Her tone shifted, growing sharp. "Besides, you're not exactly using it. Sitting there in that old house." I was speechless. Not using it. That money was my security, my safety net after years of scraping by. I tried to ask for details, what venture, how soon I'd be repaid, but she brushed me off, saying, "Trust me, it's all under control." Days turned into weeks, and the money didn't reappear. David grew distant, caught between his loyalty to me and his marriage. Rachel, meanwhile, was everywhere posting on social media about her new business, a vague startup involving artisanal candles or some such nonsense. I saw photos of her smiling at markets, her red blouse vibrant against the backdrop of her ambition. While I sat in my quiet house, the absence of my savings a constant ache. One evening, Clara stopped by with a plate of cookies, her kind eyes reading the worry on my face. "Eleanor, what's wrong?" she asked, and I spilled it all, the cake, the money, Rachel's betrayal. Clara listened, her hand resting gently on mine. "You don't deserve this," she said softly, "but you're stronger than you know. You'll find a way through." Her words were a lifeline, a reminder that I wasn't as alone as I felt. But as I looked at the empty wooden box, I knew this wasn't just about money. It was about trust, family, and the pieces of myself I'd given away too freely. I wasn't sure how, but I resolved to confront Rachel not just for the money, but for the truth. The weeks that followed were a blur of quiet anger and restless nights. I'd always prided myself on being patient, on seeing the good in people. But Rachel's actions had cracked something deep within me. My home, once a sanctuary of memories with Tom, now felt like a cage for my growing resentment. I'd catch myself staring at the wooden box, its emptiness a mocking reminder of my trust misplaced. David tried to mediate, his voice heavy with guilt when he called. "Mom, Rachel says it's a temporary loan. She's working on something big." His words were meant to reassure, but they only deepened my unease. What was this something big? Why hadn't she asked me first? I wanted to believe David, to trust that his love for Rachel didn't blind him to her flaws. But doubt gnawed at me. I decided to visit Rachel myself. It was a crisp autumn morning, the kind Tom would have loved for a walk by the lake. I drove to their apartment, a sleek new building that screamed Rachel's taste, modern, flashy, and far beyond what David's modest salary could afford. My hands shook as I rang the buzzer, but I steeled myself. I wasn't just here for answers. I was here to reclaim something of myself. Rachel opened the door, her expression a mix of surprise and annoyance. "Eleanor, what are you doing here?" she asked, her tone as sharp as the red lipstick she wore. Behind her, the apartment was a mess of boxes labeled inventory and half-packed candles in garish colors. "I want to talk about the money," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You took it without asking. Rachel, that wasn't right." She rolled her eyes, stepping aside to let me in. "It's an investment, Eleanor. I told you. You'll get it back." She gestured to the boxes, her voice taking on a rehearsed enthusiasm. "This is my business, custom candles. Eco-friendly. High-end. People are loving them. I just needed a little capital to get started. I looked at the cluttered room. The candles haphazardly packed, some with uneven wicks or cracked jars. It didn't look like a sure thing. It looked like chaos. "Rachel," I said, keeping my voice calm. "That money was mine. You didn't ask. You didn't even tell me what you were doing." Her face hardened, and she crossed her arms. "You're acting like I stole it. I'm building something here. Something that could make us all money. You should be grateful I'm including you." Grateful. The word hit me like a slap. I thought of the years I'd worked as a school secretary, saving every penny. Of the nights Tom and I went without to ensure David had what he needed. That money wasn't just cash, it was my security, my independence. And she thought I should be grateful. "Rachel," I said, my voice trembling now, "I want my money back. Now." She laughed. A cold, dismissive sound. "It's tied up in the business. You'll get it when we turn a profit. Trust me." Trust her. The words echoed in my mind as I drove home, my hands gripping the wheel. I wanted to scream, to shake her until she understood the weight of what she'd done. But more than that, I wanted to understand why. Why had she taken from me without a second thought? Why did she think so little of me? That evening, I sat with Clara again, her presence a steadying force. She brought a thermos of tea, and we sat on my porch, the air cool against my skin. "You need to protect yourself, Eleanor," she said. "Rachel's not going to give that money back willingly. You need a plan." She was right. I couldn't just wait for Rachel's promises to materialize. I started by calling my bank, asking about legal options. But the process sounded daunting: lawyers, fees, and no guarantee of recovery. I felt small, powerless. A woman in her 70s facing a world that seemed to value youth and cunning over experience and honesty. But Clara's words stayed with me. "You're stronger than you know." I began to research Rachel's business. I wasn't tech savvy, but I knew how to use the library's computers. I found her social media pages, filled with glossy photos and exaggerated claims about her candles. The comments, though, told a different story: customers complaining about late orders, poor quality, even candles that wouldn't light. The more I read, the clearer it became. Rachel's venture was failing. My money, my safety net, was sinking into a venture built on her overconfidence. I felt a mix of anger and pity: anger at her recklessness, pity for the desperation that must have driven her to this. But pity wouldn't bring my money back. I decided to confront her again, this time with evidence. I printed out the comments, the posts, anything that showed her business wasn't what she claimed. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it yet, but holding those pages felt like holding a piece of my power. As I prepared for the confrontation, I thought of Tom. He'd always said I had a quiet strength, the kind that didn't shout but endured. I wasn't sure I believed him then. But now, with my savings gone and my trust betrayed, I had to find that strength. For myself, for the life I'd built, and for the truth I deserved. The confrontation loomed like a storm on the horizon. I spent days preparing, my kitchen table covered with printed screenshots and notes. Each comment about Rachel's failing business was a small validation, a reminder that I wasn't wrong to question her. But beneath my resolve was a gnawing funnet just of losing the money, but of losing David. He was caught in the middle, torn between his mother and his wife. And I hated that this fight might drive a wedge between us. I called David first, asking him to meet me alone. We met at a small cafe near his office, a place we used to visit when he was younger, splitting a slice of pie and talking about his dreams. Now, he looked tired, his shoulders slumped under the weight of something unspoken. "Mom, I know this is hard," he said before I could start. Rachel's under a lot of pressure. She didn't mean to hurt you. Didn't mean to hurt me. I repeated, my voice low but firm. David. She took my money without asking. She smashed my birthday cake. Laughed about it. And now she's acting like I'm the problem. That's not pressure if that's disrespect. He looked down at his coffee. His silence heavy. She says the business is going to take off soon. She just needs time. I slid the folder of evidence across the table. Look at this. David. Her customers are angry. Her products aren't selling. My money, your father's, and my savings is gone because of her. He opened the folder, his eyes scanning the pages. I watched his face, searching for the boy who'd once trusted me implicitly. I didn't know it was this bad, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. I thought she had it under control. She doesn't, I said, softer now. And I can't wait for her to figure it out. I need that money back. David, I need you to help me. He nodded, but the hesitation in his eyes told me he wasn't fully on my side, not yet. I left the cafe feeling both lighter and heavier, relieved to have spoken but uncertain about what would come next. The actual confrontation with Rachel happened a week later. I asked her to meet me at my house, neutral ground where I felt stronger. She arrived late. Her red blouse swapped for a black sweater that made her look sharper, more defensive. David came too, his presence a quiet support, though I could sense his unease. Rachel, I began, standing in my living room with the folder in hand. I've given you time. I've tried to understand. But you took my money, and your business is failing. I want to know what's going on, and I want my money back. Her eyes narrowed, and she crossed her arms. You're blowing this out of proportion. Eleanor, the business is fine. I've got orders coming in. And then why are your customers complaining? I interrupted, opening the folder and spreading the pages on the coffee table. Late deliveries. Broken products. No responses to complaints. This isn't a business. Rachel. It's a mess. Her face flushed, and for a moment, I saw something crack in her composure. You don't understand how hard this is. She snapped. I'm trying to build something, and all you do is criticize. You gave me that money. I didn't give you anything. My voice rose, surprising even me. You took it. You stole it from my home, from my life. That was my security, Rachel, and you treated it like pocket change. David stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. Rachel, she's right. You should have asked. You need to make this right. For a moment, I thought she might break, might admit her mistake. But instead, she turned on me, her voice venomous. You know why this is failing. Because you didn't believe in me. You never did. Your negativity, your constant hovering, it's like a curse. If this business tanks, it's on you. The words hit like a physical blow, blaming me for her failure. I stood there, stunned, as she grabbed her bag and stormed out, leaving David and me in a silence thick with pain. David stayed, helping me gather the papers, his hands moving slowly as if processing what had just happened. I'm sorry, Mom, he said finally. I didn't know she'd go this far. I nodded, my throat tight. I know you love her, David. But I can't let this go. I need to fight for what's mine. That night, alone in my house, I felt the weight of Rachel's words. Was I to blame? Had my doubt, my caution, somehow poisoned her chances? I thought of Tom, of the way he'd always encouraged me to trust my instincts. You're not the villain, Ellie, he'd say. You're the one who holds things together. I decided then to take action. I contacted a lawyer recommended by Clara, a kind woman named Susan who specialized in small claims. She listened to my story, her eyes sharp but empathetic. "This won't be easy," she said, "but you have a case. We'll start with a formal demand letter. If she doesn't respond, we'll escalate." The letter was sent, a simple document outlining my claim and demanding repayment within 30 days. I felt a surge of hope, but also fear. What if Rachel doubled down? What if she turned David against me? As I sealed the envelope, I prayed for strength not just to win, but to hold on to the family I had left. The demand letter hung over my days like a shadow, both a promise and a threat. I checked the mailbox obsessively, hoping for a response from Rachel, some sign that she'd take responsibility. But weeks passed, and nothing. Camino letter. No call. Not even a text. David told me she'd received it, but her only reaction was to scoff and call it ridiculous. My hope began to fray, replaced by a stubborn resolve. If Rachel wouldn't do the right thing, I'd make her. Susan, my lawyer, was patient but firm. "The next step is small claims court," she explained during our second meeting. "You've got evidence: the note she left, the social media posts, your bank records. It's not airtight, but it's strong." I nodded, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. The idea of court terrified me, not because of the process, but because it meant facing Rachel in a public space, airing our family's pain for strangers to judge. Still, I thought of my savings, of the years Tom and I had sacrificed, and I knew I had no choice. Susan helped me file the paperwork, and a court date was set for 6 weeks later. In the meantime, I tried to rebuild some normalcy. Clara invited me to her book club, a small group of women who met weekly to discuss novels and share tea. I went, hesitant at first, but their warmth was a balm. We read a story about forgiveness, and though I laughed and nodded with the group, my heart wasn't in it. Forgiveness felt distant when trust was still broken. David visited often, his guilt palpable. He'd bring groceries or fix a loose cabinet, small gestures that felt like apologies. "Rachel's under a lot of stress," he'd say, almost like a mantra. "She's not herself." I wanted to believe him, but I couldn't. Rachel's actions weren't stress, they were choices. Still, I didn't push David too hard. He was my son, my link to Tom, and I couldn't bear to lose him, too. One evening, Clara came over with a new plan. "You need to talk to Rachel's customers," she said, her eyes bright with determination. "If her business is failing, they might have proof receipts, emails, anything that shows where your money went." It was a daunting idea, but it sparked something in me. I wasn't just a victim. I could fight back with more than just a lawyer. Using the library computer again, I reached out to some of the customers who'd left negative comments online. I was careful, introducing myself as someone interested in Rachel's business, asking about their experiences. To my surprise, many responded. A woman named Linda sent me screenshots of her order confirmation and a string of unanswered emails to Rachel. Another, Mark, described receiving a candle that arrived shattered, with no refund offered. Each story was a piece of the puzzle, showing Rachel's mismanagement in stark detail. Armed with this new evidence, I felt a surge of confidence. I shared it with Susan, who nodded approvingly. "This strengthens your case," she said. "It shows a pattern of negligence. If we can prove she misused your money, we're in a good position." But as the court date approached, Rachel made her next move. David called me one evening, his voice strained. "Mom, Rachel's saying you sabotaged her business. She's telling people you spread lies about her candles, that you're the reason she's losing customers." I felt the air leave my lungs. Sabotaged. The accusation was so absurd it bordered on cruel. David, you know that's not true, I said, my voice shaking. I've only asked for what's mine. I know, he said quietly. But she's upset. She's talking about countersuing you for defamation. The word countersuing sent a chill through me. Could she do that? Could she turn this around and make me the villain? I called Susan immediately, my heart racing. She reassured me that Rachel's claim was weak, especially without evidence. But the fear lingered. That night, I dreamed of Tom. He was standing in our old garden, his hands dirty from planting roses, his smile warm and steady. You're not alone, Ellie, he said in the dream. You've got more fight in you than you know. I woke with tears in my eyes, but a renewed sense of purpose. Rachel could throw accusations, could try to twist the truth, but I had facts on my side. I had Clara, Susan, and the memory of Tom's belief in me. I wasn't just fighting for money anymore, I was fighting for my dignity, for the right to be seen and heard. As the court date drew closer, I prepared meticulously, organizing my evidence, practicing my statement with Susan. I thought of Rachel's words, blaming me for her failure, and I realized something. Her blame was her weakness, not mine. She couldn't face her own mistakes, so she'd cast them onto me. But I was done carrying her burdens. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. A plain room with fluorescent lights and rows of chairs that creaked under the weight of nervous anticipation. I sat beside Susan, my hands folded tightly in my lap, the folder of evidence resting on the table before me. Across the room, Rachel sat with a lawyer I didn't recognize, her face a mask of defiance. David was there, too, sitting in the back, his expression unreadable. I wanted to catch his eye, to find some reassurance, but he kept his gaze fixed on the floor. The judge, a stern woman with gray hair pulled into a tight bun, called the case to order. Susan presented our side first, her voice clear and measured. She laid out the facts, the missing money, Rachel's note, the failing business, the customer complaints. She handed over the screenshots, the bank records, everything we'd gathered. I felt a swell of pride watching her, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this fight. When it was my turn to speak, my voice trembled at first. I told the judge about my birthday, the smashed cake, the moment I found the empty box. I spoke of Tom, of the years we'd saved, of what that money meant to me. It wasn't just money, I said, my eyes meeting the judge's. It was my security, my independence. She took it without asking and blamed me when her plans fell apart. Rachel's lawyer countered, painting her as a struggling entrepreneur who'd made an honest mistake. He claimed the money was a gift I'd offered, that Rachel's note was merely a formality. He even brought up her accusation of sabotage, suggesting my interference had damaged her business. I felt my face burn, but Susan squeezed my hand under the table, a silent reminder to stay calm. When Rachel took the stand, her voice was smooth, almost rehearsed. Eleanor never believed in me, she said, her eyes flicking toward me. She's always been critical, always looking down on me. I borrowed the money because I thought she wanted to help. Her negativity is why things went wrong. The judge's expression didn't change, but I saw her scribble something on her notepad. When it was time for cross-examination, Susan was relentless. She asked Rachel about the customer complaints, the unpaid orders, the lack of any repayment plan. Rachel faltered, her answers vague, her confidence cracking. The hearing ended with the judge promising a ruling within 2 weeks. As we left the courtroom, Rachel brushed past me, her shoulder grazing mine. "This isn't over," she muttered. low enough that only I could hear. I didn't respond, but her words stayed with me, a reminder of the battle still ahead. David caught up with me outside, his face pale. "Mom, I didn't know she'd say those things," he said. "I'm trying to fix this. I promise." I wanted to believe him, but trust was a fragile thing now. "I know you're trying," I said, my voice soft but firm. "But I need you to see her for who she is. David. Not who you want her to be." The waiting period was agonizing. I threw myself into small distractions, helping Clara with her garden, baking cookies for the book club, even starting a journal to process my thoughts. Writing helped, each word a way to reclaim my voice. I wrote about Tom, about the life we'd built, about the woman I was becoming through this ordeal. Clara was my rock, always there with a kind word or a practical suggestion. One evening, she brought over a photo album she'd found in her attic, filled with pictures of our neighborhood from years ago. There was one of Tom and me, laughing at a block party, our faces younger but no less full of love. "You're still that woman," Clara said, pointing to the photo. "Strong, even when you don't feel it." 2 weeks later, the ruling came. Susan called me, her voice calm but triumphant. "The judge ruled in your favor. Eleanor, Rachel has to repay the $5,000, plus court fees. If she doesn't comply, we can escalate to garnish her wages." Relief flooded me, but it was bittersweet. The money would help, but it wouldn't undo the hurt, the betrayal, the fracture in my family. I thanked Susan, my voice thick with emotion, and hung up, staring at the wooden box on my counter. It was still empty, but for the first time, I felt it might hold something again, hope. Maybe. Or the promise of justice. I called David to share the news, hoping it might bring us closer. He was quiet for a long moment before saying, "I'm glad. Mom, I'll talk to Rachel. We'll figure this out." But as I hung up, I knew figuring it out wouldn't be simple. Rachel's blame, her refusal to take responsibility, had left scars that money couldn't heal. Still, I felt a quiet strength growing inside me, a certainty that I could face whatever came next. The weeks after the ruling were a strange mix of victory and unease. The court had ordered Rachel to repay me, but the money didn't appear. Susan warned me this might happen. Rachel could drag her feet, claim financial hardship, or simply refuse. "We'll keep the pressure on," Susan said, already drafting a follow-up letter. But the waiting was its own kind of wait, a reminder that justice on paper wasn't the same as justice in reality. David was trying harder now, his visits more frequent, his apologies more earnest. He brought me a new wooden box, hand-carved and polished, as a gesture of peace. "I know it doesn't fix everything," he said, his eyes searching mine, "but I want you to feel safe again." I hugged him, tears prickling my eyes. "I just want us to be okay," I whispered. He nodded, but I could see the strain in his face, the toll of living with Rachel's choices. I wondered how long he could stay in that marriage, caught between love and truth. One afternoon, Clara invited me to a community fair, a small event with local vendors and music. I went, hoping for a distraction. The fair was lively, with children laughing and stalls brimming with crafts. But then I saw her, Rachel, at a booth covered in her candles, her smile bright and forced as she pitched to passers-by. My heart sank, but I felt a pull to approach her. Not out of anger, but out of a need to understand. I waited until her booth was empty, then walked over, my hands steady despite the knot in my chest. "Rachel," I said, my voice calm. She froze, her smile faltering. "I'm not here to fight. I just want to know why. Why did you take from me? Why did you blame me?" For a moment, she didn't speak. Then, to my surprise, her shoulders slumped, and her eyes glistened. I thought I could do it, she said, her voice low. I thought I could make something big. Prove I was more than this. She gestured to the booth. The unsold candles. I was desperate. Eleanor, I didn't think you'd miss the money. Her words were raw, unguarded, and for the first time, I saw not just the woman who'd hurt me, but the one who was hurting. Rachel, I said softly, that money was my life, my safety. You didn't just take it, you took my trust. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I know. I'm sorry. I don't know how to fix it. I didn't have an answer for her. Apologies couldn't undo the past. And trust, once broken, was hard to rebuild. But her honesty was a start. A crack in the wall between us. Start by paying me back, I said. Not just the money, but the respect you owe me. She promised to try, and though I wasn't sure I believed her, I felt lighter as I walked away. Not because the fight was over, but because I'd faced her, not as a victim, but as a woman who knew her worth. Months later, the money began to trickle in small payments. Irregular but real. Rachel's business folded, but she found a job at a local store. And David told me she was trying to change. I didn't know if I'd ever fully forgive her, but I felt a shift in myself, a strength I hadn't known I had. Clara and I celebrated my 71st birthday together. Just the two of us, with a cake she'd baked and a single candle. As I blew it out, I made a wish, not for money or even forgiveness, but for the courage to keep standing up for myself. David and I grew closer, our bond healing through honest conversations and time. Rachel remained a question mark, a part of our family, but no longer its center. I learned to set boundaries, to protect my heart without closing it. Looking back, I realized the smashed cake, the stolen money, the blame, they weren't just betrayals. They were a crucible, forging a version of me that was stronger, wiser, and unafraid. I'd lost something, yes, but I'd gained something too, the certainty that my voice, my life, mattered. And no one, not Rachel, not anyone, could take that away.